All right, let's move on to some strange campaign doings from Kamala Harris. They clearly, she went on with Reverend Sharpton. We showed you that interview, went on the Shade Room, had Barack Obama go out and lecture black men for some reason that was very disturbing and uncomfortable. They clearly realize that they need to shore up their support with what is a key voting demographic for the Democratic Party, and it's been consistently very supportive. So one of the efforts they put out was the following ad. Take a look.
Hello, ladies. I'm Trey. It's good to be here.
Hey, Trey.
Hey, hey.
So, what do you do and how much do you make?
I work in finance, making six figures.
How tall are you?
6'5".
Okay. Do you work out?
I like to stay active, yeah.
Do you have a plan to vote?
I didn't plan on it.
So basically the message here is, guys, if you don't vote and vote for Kamala Harris, then you're not going to get any dates. It's pretty wild.
Okay, so, I mean, shocking, crazy, also indicative of a real phenomenon. I mean, if we're going to be real. And let's put this up there on the screen. This has been, I mean, how many monologues have I done about this now? At this point, how many times have I talked about it here in the show? Gender is going to be a huge factor in this election. Here's what the data shows. What they say is that we're on track for one of the largest gender gaps in modern American history. Quote, younger women are registering to vote at record rates. They tell abortion pollsters abortion rights are their most crucial voting concern. If you look at the gender gap, which has been in every election since 1980. It is at a record high. That is the gap specifically between men and women and what they're voting on. If we look at the Georgia poll that I just referenced, that dropped this morning from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, you see a massive 50-point spread between men and women on the question of who they're going to support for president. And actually, when we dig into young men, that is even more interesting. So let's put this up there on the screen. Wall Street Journal, same phenomenon. Gender gap is defining feature of the deadlocked Trump-Harris race. Now, as we have seen, racial de-alignment in the U.S., a lot of it is polarizing amongst gender lines. Now, still, the most polarizing thing in America is education. But education is also polarizing amongst gender lines. We've had now some 4 years of massive female enrollment in colleges relative to men, huge numbers of young men, Gen Z men specifically, dropping out of college and or not even attending college in the first place, pursuing a different career path. I think that's great, but culturally sets people up for a lot of divisions whenever it comes to the dating market, in terms of wages, where you move. I've talked about this a lot. It really determines like who you are and like what you do. Now, based on that, what we see is this dating thing is a real phenomenon, which you actually pulled this, and it's fantastic. Let's put it up there on the screen. Some 3/4 of college-educated young women are less likely to date a Trump supporter. So here we have all young women, people who say that they are a lot less likely to date a Trump supporter, some 55%. Somewhat less likely is actually still more. Amongst Republicans, it's a little bit different.
Even 39% of Republican women are like,
that's why I'm like, is
no
this
Trump,
real?
Trump
I mean, but this is the survey of American life. It's actually a pretty rock solid survey. Now it says young women with a college degree, some 76% say that they are less likely to date someone who is a Trump supporter. Some 52% say Republican. And then young women
wild.
with the high school education, it's still some 38% and 30% on if they're the question of a Republican or not. So that ad kind of hits at something. And I mean, I think it's very unfortunate, given the way politics are and just sociologically and like what that means for the country. But that's what the ad, I guess, is trying to capitalize on. And specifically,
kind of interesting. They're going right at it, huh?
Well, what I think they're really going at is I don't think it's a coincidence there was a young black guy who was in there. And because it's part of the blackmail strategy. So first we lecture, then we shame about, what Obama said, I need to speak to the brothers. So now they're like, oh, well, now we need to make sure that they know that these black women, they're not going to want to get with you if you don't vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, frankly, I think it's disgusting, but it is a real phenomenon, so there you go.
Yeah. If you dig into the numbers also of what issues men versus women say are their top priorities, and again, as you were pointing before, like, I think it's difficult for people to actually say, like, this is my
100%.
top issue and this is how I'm ranking things. But anyway, it's interesting to look at the numbers. In August, the economy and inflation were men's most important issues in deciding their vote. For women, abortion and the economy and inflation are all tied as the most important issues. And for women under age 45, abortion is the single most important voting issue. Similar findings, in that Wall Street Journal piece we had up as well. 27% of women, but only 8% of men list abortion as the top issue motivating their vote for president. And you see, like, we have long seen how the gender gap is probably going to be the defining issue of this election. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that the electorate demographically is divided. But in this one, we are likely to see, if the polls bear out, the largest gender gap in modern American history. The gender gap emerged basically in 1980, and women have tended to be more Democratic and men more Republican for, our entire lives, certainly. But we're getting to new and extraordinary levels of divergence between the two sexes. And you also saw this even in the strategy of, like, Republicans at the RNC. It was this very, like, Hulk Hogan and Dana White and this very, like, campy kind of masculinity. And, the women tend to vote at slightly higher rates than men. So, in some ways you would rather be on the female side of that gender divide, but it just all depends on how large the gap is and which direction.
It all depends on the gap. There's also a lot of, if you look at married women, they actually end up voting Republican a little bit more than unmarried women. But again, marriage rates are declining, so it's not necessarily a bet that you want to be on. So overall, it is clearly part of a major sociological phenomenon. It is not one that I think the campaign should be getting into, because it probably exacerbates and makes it worse, especially once people dig into all this. But it is one that we are likely going to have to live with. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.